everybody. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. Been doing Radio Dead Air for ages, but I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who's also skilled in IT. Fusion Warrior, thank you for 86 months, almost a whole year. Thank you so much. We'll be taking your tech questions tonight. If you have them, you can send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. Please send them along. We also have some news and stuff to talk about. How you doing, Mike?
Not too bad. The two fires that were relatively near me, that were sending smoke my way when the wind was right, are almost completely contained. 90% and that's the big one. 98%.
Yeah, the Santa Ana's calmed down at all, or?
Yes. Wind is actually blowing from the ocean now,
there you go.
Which means for a number of these fires, it's now blowing them back over areas they've already burned, so they can't really burn anymore. So containment's going to jump up dramatically on them.
Oh, that's good.
That's something, I won't say funny, but in related happened at work. I walk in the building, clear blue sky outside. The smoke is not over us anymore. I walk in and the entire building smells smoky, and I'm looking around, there's something on fire. Is the AC acting up? And what it turned out to be is one of the groups that I'm not involved with directly was doing a cookout outside.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's fine. But we allow that. That's fine. But didn't have the situational awareness to realize that they had set up their grill 40 feet upwind from the main AC intake of the building.
I mean, it's not really a great time for grilling out, you know.
Well, if I'm going to be honest with you, Nash, if they managed to catch the pavement they were on fire, more power to them.
All right. So there's been a lot of bad news lately. It has been stressful. It has just been a whole lot for people to process. I know. We're going to talk about something marginally interesting and good right now, though. Although we don't have many details at all. Because that's just Nintendo for you.
And that's the story is, hey, Nintendo released a thing. We know nothing about it practically. We saw some pictures. It's probably the released product. It's probably not a mock-up.
Yeah. So Nintendo has unveiled, barely, the Switch 2. It is the Switch 2. What can we tell you? We can tell you some things, but nothing.
We can tell you it is materially bigger than a Switch. We can tell you that the screen looks nice.
Yeah, they're probably using an OLED for this. And it's bigger.
We can tell you it probably weighs more.
We'll see.
Well, no, it doesn't seem much more. The Switch is about a pound. So if this weighed somehow 5 pounds, it'd be like, that's excessive. But if this weighed 20 ounces, I'd be like, that's not too bad.
It also has a more elaborate kickstand than the previous one did, instead of just having a little.
The last one's kickstand was basically, oh, hey, we might need to add a kickstand to this. It looked like it was put on 5 minutes before they sent the specs to production.
Yeah, it was like one little leg, which is not super secure. So this one's got 2 legs, and it can fold almost flat on the desk. So it's got a bunch of different angles for you to engage with it, which, if you're carrying this around and using it remotely, that's nice.
But then there's all the stuff we don't know. We don't know price.
Well, no, we also know they have promised backwards compatibility with all Switch 1 games, and that includes the non-digital ones. So that means there's a slot on here for the Switch cards that plug into it, little flash cards. So
I've got a couple of those kicking around on this deck somewhere.
they're probably going to continue that physical media. So,
Yeah.
I mean, which is a little weird in the era of games, because you have the physical game, but you're still going to download like half the fucking game anyway. But still there,
Yeah.
that's going to be a continuation. Which, considering, I mean, that's such a no brainer, because when you're trying to introduce,
we say it's a no-brainer, but there have been plenty of game companies that say, hey, here's the next console. By the way, it's backwards compatible with some things, but not everything.
Well, I mean, if you want something to launch with a lot of enthusiasm and you want to guarantee sales, having a giant library on day one,
Indeed,
and they're probably good.
Anyone who has broken their Switch One since January 1st is going like, yeah, I'm not going to buy another Switch. I'll get the Switch 2. All my games are going to be good. I mean, my people on my islands will have died from starvation, but they'll be good.
Well, the Switch isn't going to go anywhere. Hopefully, they're probably going to phase it out, and they're going to probably the Switch and the Switch 2 are going to live side by side for a little while, which will mean there's probably going to be a cut on Switch prices.
Yeah.
So you get a discount there. And considering, I mean, people have to decide if they want to invest in the older one because there are going to be games that are going to be exclusive to the Switch 2 that the earlier one can't play. And because of that, we could kind of assume it's going to be using a more powerful graphics processor. It's probably going to be using an NVIDIA again, because that's what Nintendo's been sticking with, which also means they may be able to, under the hood, try to pull some DLSS tricks to get some more frame rate out of it. I don't know how much they did that on the Switch, but we'll have to see what they can do with this. One thing that is a little disappointing, though, now people initially this looked like it was a really good thing. The Joy-Cons, they're magnetic. They, instead of sliding down the side of the Switch, now they're attached by magnets. You just click them on the sides. That's good for, ease of use, but it's bad for a different reason. The first generation Joy-Cons were notorious for having a drift issue. Even like completely, you move, they wear down because they have a physical, the way the
physical contact in there, and that's how. And it was not a particularly robust one. And I say that because there have been plenty of controllers over the years that may have had drift issues, but it took years of use for them to develop it. And you go, oh, this controller's 7 years old. Yeah, it's got a little bit of drift in it. That's understandable.
And the simple solution to drift issues with joysticks is to switch them to Hall effect style joysticks, which are a magnetic sensor. Are you starting to see the problem here?
Yeah, and if you're magnetically connected, you're having another magnetic sensor there. Unless you had some shielding on it.
Have to have a lot of shielding, because this is a magnet that's intended to hold the two devices to the machine. So it pretty much, just by the design of the new Joy-Cons, that rules out a Hall effect. So we may still be dealing with drift.
Hopefully they made these sticks a lot more robust than these Switch ones.
I
think we'll see within 2 months of release, of launch date.
They also have the new Joy-Cons have the ability to act as a mouse, which is weird. I feel like it's going to be a lot like the Apple mouse. Remember that? The puck that came with the first generation iMac? That round mouse, and everyone's like, how the fuck do it was so non-ergonomic. These are not very ergonomic. I feel like the Steam Deck has lapped them on that, with the sides of it being very comfortable to hold and whatnot. I don't know how well these are going to work as a mouse. I feel like there will probably be a mouse for the Switch that, kind of works.
My suspicion as to why they're saying, hey, you can use it as a mouse is they'll be, oh yeah, if you want to check your email on this, you can.
Well, I mean, adding the mouse gives it the ability to play games that it couldn't before. Like, you can play Baldur's Gate 3 on a console. It's just really frustrating to use a controller with that game. adding a mouse, that opens up, a lot of different, potential opportunities. It also, this is one of those things that for years, console players, bless your hearts, they complain about people in online shooters. The biggest complaint they have is people on PC using a mouse and keyboard because they're more precise. They hate the cross, whenever there's crossplay with like a console or something. They hate the fact
they're screaming that you must be using an aiming bot or something. No, man, I got a mouse and keyboard.
Just the idea of using a mouse and keyboard is supposedly cheating, and I'm like, they could add that shit to your system. You just don't want to use it. So adding a mouse and keyboard, or at least the mouse option to the Switch, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So what they haven't said, they haven't given a launch date. They haven't given a battery life. They haven't given a price. They haven't given, I think those are the three big ones.
People are guesstimating. Now, of course, this is not official price. Nintendo's not giving any details. People are guesstimating it's going to be around $450, which that sounds a little high, but considering you're also going to have the Switch alongside it for sale still for a while, and the Switch Lite is even an option right now, this ecosystem is going to be pretty vibrant with plenty of different options for hopping into it. So, yeah. We'll see. What
apparently
happens.
someone is reporting that Switch 2 pre-orders went live at one European site. I don't know how reliable this place is. At 380.
Yeah, that what often happens with a lot of sites doing pre-orders, they will guess, even if they don't have official.
And then they come back and say, "Hey, it turned out to be more than we thought. Do you still want it? You'll need to pay an extra 40 euros."
Shit, GameSpot used to do crap like that, or GameStop used to do shit like that all the time too. They'd be like, "Hey," or they would cancel your pre-order entirely and be like, fuck you.
Well, I did one, not computer related. I ordered one thing from the UK at one point. And, it says, "Oh, what's your address?" And I filled it all out. And they contacted me a few days later. "Hey, we didn't realize our site would let us ship to the US. Can we get like $10 extra for shipping?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's fair." Because they were a small indie site. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fair."
Now, this is a little bit of bad news, but I appreciate that AMD is doing it. Because we need to have some sort of quality control here for competition in the GPU space. Yep. AMD, the 9070 XT and the 9070 are being held back because they are polishing up some of the software and especially FSR. And I understand why they're doing that. The place where AMD has taken the biggest pummeling, they are slower than NVIDIA, yes, but they've tried to be commensurately priced, even if they wait a few months to give you the proper price. They've tried to be commensurately priced against NVIDIA's offerings. But what has really been a sticking point has been the fact that DLSS, at least DLSS resolution scaling and anti-aliasing and all that, has been superior to AMD's solution, which is FSR. It looks better. So FSR 4 promises, and it looks like FSR 4 has made up a big chunk of that gap. But if that comes out and face plants, AMD is going to be up a freaking creek with this gen, because you only get one chance to make a first impression. And especially with reviewers, especially because what reviewers will do is they get your product day one, they review it, they put that review online, and that's the review. So whenever anyone comes and looks for the your gear, looks for whatever your device was, that's what they'll always find is that first review. So if you get a really good first day review and later on it turns out to be really bad, that's good for the company. But if you get a really bad first day review and it comes back later, it turns out to be, the card's actually, the thing's much better. That's bad for the company because it's too late. So AMD has had a lot of day one reviews that have just been cratered by the fact that they have priced things way too high in relation to how the performance they've provided. And then so they come back like a month later, 2 months later, like, all right, here's a better price. It's too late because reviewers have already given them the value proposition on day one. So the idea that AMD is like, well, maybe we should not do the stupid thing this time is a nice idea.
Indeed.
Maybe can we this time not fuck up? I don't know, guys. Let's try not fucking up for once. It's crazy, but it just might work. We still don't have like entirely precise details on FSR4 and how locked down it is to the RX 9000 series, and if it will be like one of the nice things, given its limitations about FSR, is you don't have to have an RTX graphics card to use it. So even old cards like the GTX 1080, which is a venerable old monster, could make use of FSR, and it could get upscaling technology and stuff to improve, frame rate without having to have specialized stuff. So any card could use it. We don't know how that's going to go. We still are don't quite sure how FSR4 is dependent on the 9000 series, but I don't know. We're going to see.
Yeah. I think a good piece of this article that we haven't talked about, though, is that they said, hey, we're not trying to, AMD said, hey, we're not going to try to make the top of the line alternative here. We want to take all the mid-range.
Yeah. And that's because that's been the craziest thing. Stuff like the 5090 is bragging rights only. It is a completely impractical card for 99% of people. Like, some people have been like, well, I don't know, I could do like rendering and stuff. I could use 32 gigs of VRAM. Yeah, 99% of people don't. They want to play Fortnite. Oh yeah, update the stream info. Thanks. Let me fix that.
Now, let me say, if someone gave me a brand new inbox 5090, would I use it? Maybe. Would I sell it? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, considering the price of the 5090, you could get two 5080s for the price of one 5090. I'd sell it, get a 5080.
I'd sell it and keep what I currently have. Just have an extra chunk of money. Now, I say my one disappointment in the 9000 series is that they are not PCIe 5, but that's okay. They'll get there in the next generation.
Yeah, and it's like, how necessary is it right now? And how many people have adopted? By the next generation, I'm pretty sure we're going to have dropped AM4. But AM4 is still a massive platform. Even though NVIDIA, there are 2 generations on AM5, AM4 is resilient as shit. And
everything still works under. Why upgrade?
Yeah, it's still limited to PCIe 4 there. So without PCIe 5 support, I mean, one more generation I could see, because that's going to be a year or two from now. Probably about 2 years. That's when we're going to see GPUs like, all right, we're moving to PCIe 5. Sorry. But AMD targeting the mid-range, that is a place that NVIDIA has pretty much forsaken. Of all of the cards they announced for the 50 series, only one was anything like what I would consider affordable, and that was the 5070 at $550. The 5070 Ti, the 5080, the 5090, that's no. Those are all way too expensive. Because like $700, $800, $1,000 is too much. And AMD going, we want the people to buy our products because they can afford to buy them and not just look at them and go, well, I guess I have to get this one because I can't afford the big one. So that is, market share makes a big difference. If people get used to your product and have a good feeling about your product. I was an AMD guy for years. And then Bulldozer happened. And I was like,
Bulldozer was a disaster.
You know what? I'm going to take a chance. I haven't used Intel before. And that's when I started switching to Intel. I got like a 3700K. And then I got a 4090K 6-core 12-thread back when that was still, oh my God. And I stayed with Intel until
prices got ridiculous.
Yeah, and then I saw what they had available for AMD, and I'm like, well, okay. And now I'm back on AMD again. That's kind of how this market share makes a big difference. If they get more of it. All right. Final one, though. The full official reviews for the 5090 came out. And
even though they gave them only a few days to do them over a holiday weekend.
3 days over a holiday weekend. What the fuck? Like Hardware Canucks, and like everybody was putting out like with their they weren't like casting shade really on NVIDIA, but they were thanking everybody who worked on their staff for putting together this review in such a short time. And I'm like,
well, hang on, Hardware Canucks, the 20th wasn't a holiday for them, right?
No, but it was still really fast time they had to put it together. And yeah. The 5090, what it looks like is, yeah, it only has about on average, depending on the game, about a 27% improvement over the 4090.
Which is the same number we had, the same number we were reporting last week. We just had initial numbers, and hey, that initial number did not change.
I mean, we could be generous and round it up to say 30%, but here's the problem. The difference in performance between the 3090 and the 4090 was something like 50%, which was amazing. It was huge. That's why the 4090, like everybody's like, fuck, this card's amazing. And it was only $100 more expensive. Now, keep in mind, we went from a $1,300 graphics card, or was a $1,400 graphics card. What was the prices? $1,300 to $1,400 or something like that. It was still a crazy expensive card. But to give you half again the performance for only $100 more was amazing. Mm-hmm. Now, however, it's 30% more for $300 more because now the price has jumped from around $1,700 to $2,000 for the 5090, or at least MSRP. The availability is we still don't know yet.
Yeah, and that is a problem with it. There's concerns about the availability. We don't know how many NVIDIA is actually going to make, how many are going to be available for not AI bros.
And it's 125 more watts, so a 30% power increase over the 450 watts before. So it's up to 575 watts. It's crazy. And they so price increased by 30, power consumption increased by 30, performance increased by 30. That's it. That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
Now, if it had been another
I will say, Tom's Hardware, which we're pulling this stuff from.
Yeah.
They've got a pros and cons thing here, and they go pros, fastest GPU around, usually.
Yeah.
32 gig of GDDR7 on a 512 bus. I'm not going to lie, that's impressive. That is definitely in the pro column. PCIe 5 interface, definitely in the pro column. Although, as we mentioned in the last article, who needs that right now? Not a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then their last pro is potent AI performance. And no, Tom's Hardware, that's not in the pro column.
That's not, nobody cares. Nobody fucking cares. There was also a look at the Hardware Unboxed did a deep dive. You should definitely watch this video if you're interested in this sort of stuff about DLSS 4 multi-frame, which they were claiming NVIDIA and all the promotional material for the 5090, they knew this thing was going to underwhelm. So they pushed heavy on the DLSS stuff, the DLSS 4 with the multi-frame generation. Hardware Unboxed looked at this. Here's the problem with multi-frame generation. Now, this is motion smoothing. This is the same stuff that when you go to your parents' house at Christmas and you try to watch their TV and you turn it off. It's the same technology. It's related.
Then they turn around and they thank you.
Yeah. The problem here is these frames aren't real information. They're guesses the computer is making. So the real information is every other with current DLSS, with DLSS 3, the information was every other frame, which already added some latency. It may, if you didn't have it fast enough, if you didn't hit like a consistent 60 frames per second or higher already without with the frame generation, it's already going to feel laggy. It's going to feel slow. It's going to feel like it's not responding to you because it's taking time to And
it will occasionally throw a weird artifact where it basically guessed wrong.
But the latency was if you already had a high frame rate in the game and you weren't playing multiplayer, these things are you can't use frame generation in multiplayer. You have to have accurate information on screen at all times. So if you're not doing that, maybe frame generation can be helpful, but they found the overhead on this was a problem because the more frames you're generating, that lowers your real frame rate. So let's say you had gotten the game to like a super high-end Cyberpunk with all the things turned up. You got in the game to around 60 frames per second without the bells and whistles. You turn on DLSS 4 frame generation. Now you're down to 55 frames per second or worse.
Yeah.
So you have the fake frames and it kind of looks smoother, but it's going to feel laggy unless, and from the looks of it, from what Hardware Unboxed showed us, it looked to me like you just want, if you're going to use frame generation, you wouldn't want to turn on multi-frame. You just want to use the single frame generation at most because
it's a marketing point that no one cares about.
Well, some people care about it, but they were using it to
some people care about Copilot.
They were using it to claim that the 5070 is going to be faster than the 4090, which is a lie. It's not. The other thing is we don't know how this speed level scales across Blackwell, which is the architecture. So we don't know if we're going to be looking at 20 to 30% faster for all the cards.
And the other question I have, and I just lost my other question. Oh yes, my other question.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember this.
Yeah.
Is this multi-frame generation something the game has to make?
Yes, they
available?
have to add. I was just talking about earlier, we were playing XCOM 2 on the stream. I was talking about earlier, XCOM 2 predates all of this stuff. It predates DLSS. It predates all of that stuff. Only power I get from the game is pure rasterization. I can't use tensor cores or RT cores on my 4080. And sometimes I had to balance the settings to get it to be straight 60 frames per second at 4K, which I know a lot of people aren't playing it like that. But it speaks to the raw under the hood performance of these cards. So, and that's my 4080. If you're at 1440p and you're using like a 4070 or 4060 or something like that, And you're using a game like XCOM 2, which doesn't have DLSS, which doesn't have those features on it. You need the raw power. And the more they rely on DLSS to be, this is where, look how fast these cards are, that's kind of a hindrance on these games. So and also if it's only a 30% increase down the line, if say the 4070 is only a 30% or the 5070 is only a 30% increase over the 4070, is that worthwhile? And if we look at the data, we don't know how the data center stuff is going to scale, but if the Blackwell accelerators are only 30% faster, using 30% more power, and we don't know the cost of those, obviously. How worthwhile is it going to be to move from Lovelace AI accelerators to Blackwell if you're only getting
if you're not getting a commensurate increase? Yeah,
because the price is obviously going to go up. So
absolutely.
They're going to charge.
NVIDIA knows they're minting money. They're making their own money right now.
Yeah.
Well, no, the AI bros are still buying a lot of stuff. So NVIDIA is going to ride that wave as long as they can, and probably longer.
But it's not going to give them if they buy a bunch of Blackwell stuff, more expensive, hotter because of the power draw, less efficient, and slightly more powerful. That's not going to take them where they want to go. I mean,
well, remember, these are AI bros. They don't even know where they want to go. They just want to try to get investments.
Yeah. Well, it's going to make it worse for them, and it's going to make it harder to get investments because they're not going to be able to pretend like they've got.
I find myself hard to sympathize with AI bros not getting investments.
Oh, I'm not sympathizing. I'm just talking about the Ed Zitron. You got to follow him on Blue Sky. He's got a lot about AI stuff.
He dislikes AI nearly as much as we do.
His main concern is not, poor the AI industry. His main concern is the fallout when that bubble bursts on the rest of the tech industry, because he remembers. Well, I don't know if he was actually there for it, but we had the .com bubble.
Yep.
That shit all over tech. Everywhere the tech industry just collapsed. Really hard on me because I worked in tech in those years. Then we had the other bubbles, which did not get as pervasive, but this bubble is everywhere. It's at Microsoft. Microsoft didn't hop in on the NFT shit. They are hopping all in on this. Microsoft, we don't know what their liability looks like when it comes to this. NVIDIA, their entire product stack is all in on this crap.
I think Microsoft's biggest vulnerability regarding AI will be that they're pushing it out on corporate and not providing them a way to turn it off, especially for those corporate functions or government functions that require this not to be here, because we can't have data leak from this area to this area to this area. And if you want a great example of what I'm talking about, law firms. I follow Catherine Tewson on Blue Sky, and if you don't follow her, you should. She's amazing. Every few weeks, she gets a new legal chew toy. Someone who thinks they understand the law and doesn't. And she's been going back and forth with Microsoft, including at least one Microsoft employee, going, how do I turn this off? I can't have this stuff leak from one client to another, and I need your guarantees that it doesn't. And a contract of adhesion saying, oh, hey, here's Copilot. We're not responsible for any damages it causes. It's not going to fly.
I did a thread about this like today. how people are like, people are looking for an alternative to Windows because Microsoft is, when it comes to this shit, they are drunk and they are playing helicopter dick with this AI stuff. And it's like, what are you doing? And they're like, woo! So everybody's like, we need an option here because they're fucking wacky right now. Trouble with Linux, and I had a big thing about this. This is just brief summation here, is while you've got Red Hat, which is all in on support, they will, that's their whole basis. They put out a Linux distro.
Here it is, free. You need support. Pay us.
But they're not really developers, and they don't change. They don't have their own interface. They don't have their own GUI. They are relying on other people's GUIs that overlay over Linux and whatnot. And the underlying, they don't develop Linux. Everybody does. And it's kind of directionless. Like some people will take it in one direction. We're going to add these things and this. But there's no like, okay, here's the year we are focusing on work groups. Here's, that this is this. They don't do that. And without developers that react to specific business we need a group that's willing to develop for Linux with a business focus. Because right now, I mean, Linux owns the server. Linux owns servers. Apache is in every way, every day, better and better than Windows Server. Like that is, and the reason it does is techies love Linux on the server because they can just all day long they will pop open the console and they will it's great. But when you're talking about the desktop,
when you're talking about the average user, they one, they don't want to do that. Two, often they can't do that.
Yeah.
Three, sometimes they shouldn't do that because it's the how to word this. The rawer the interface, the easier it is to screw things up.
Yeah.
If you've got a toggle that says light mode, dark mode for your web page, that's not difficult to use. If you have to do that in a command prompt, and that same command, by the way, can also say, that same command on the command prompt can toggle light mode and dark mode, but can also change font sizes or whatever. Suddenly you've got a guy going, why is everything in wingdings?
Yeah, I mean, I realized lately, whenever I've had to try to fix something in Windows, and sometimes you have to fix stuff in Windows, it's only if I ever have to open the command prompt in Windows, something is seriously fucked up. That if you have to go to a C prompt in Windows to fix something is seriously fucked up. I mean, even
I will say the counterpart says, I go to the command prompt fairly often at work, not because something is screwed up, but because it is the quickest way for me to get the piece of information I want.
But most people don't even need to go there. Everything else, like the repairs, all that other stuff, regedit is part of the GUI. Like you don't have to go near all of it is part of the GUI. And Linux, you got to go to the console a lot, especially like I've discovered stuff with my media server. Like for example, their version of an exe installer is something they call Flatpak files, and you download the file, you double click on it, it installs your program like Firefox or something. Trouble is, for some reason, they've kind of siloed off Flatpak apps who don't have full options to access Linux. Unlike like I tried to install Firefox and then I couldn't install certain extensions on Firefox because it was Flatpak. So what I had to do is I had to uninstall Firefox. Then I had to open the console and I had to install Firefox from the console, and then I could install my extensions.
Yeah. Well, and as another example, just on Windows here. So talking about Copilot still. I was doing the experimenting. Can I remove Copilot from this machine I am on right now? And it's theoretically not on here.
Yeah.
I had to open PowerShell in admin mode. You cannot trust the average user
No.
with PowerShell in admin mode.
Well, I mean,
I don't necessarily trust the average user with PowerShell.
Most people are never going to need to do that. You can handle most problems in Windows without having to touch the console.
Yeah.
Linux needs that. Linux needs a GUI that can say, all right, if the only reason you'll ever need to open the console is if you really, really wanna, or something is completely inexplicably fucked. Those should be the only reasons you ever go into the console. Anyway, that's side. We gotta get your actual questions this week. Okay, this is from Manuel. Hey, Nash and Mike, I was thinking about upgrading my video card this year, but if I get an RTX 4000 or 5000 CPU, am I going to need to use that bad melting 12 whatever connector?
Yes.
I've got a pretty good setup right now, and I have a good power supply that's a little older, but still in good shape. I think it's something like 650 watts. Is there some kind of adapter I can get? Well,
okay. So first and foremost, if you're going with a 5000 series GPU, you're probably going to need to upgrade that power supply anyway. At which point you don't need to worry about the adapter. You just get the power supply that supports that new the new power connector.
Let me see. Well, the thing about that power connector is it's not across the board yet on NVIDIA's side. What we're talking about is NVIDIA, because they decided to funnel ridiculous amounts of power through their graphics cards, instead of just using the established PCIe power connector for their graphics cards and just adding one more connection to enable more power. They're like, what if we take these thick cables and make them itty bitty tiny cables? Just one itty bitty tiny cable. It'll be fine. And well, depending on how much power you're pushing through it, it is fine. But when you're getting to, say, 4080, 4090 levels of power draw, less fine, because it's lower down the stack, like the RTX 4060 doesn't need the NVIDIA high-end power cable. It can get by with one power connection. So it's up to manufacturers which connector they're going to put on the card, and it's cheaper and easier to use the older connector, and it's more reliable too. So if what you're going to buy is something like a 4060 Ti, let me see, the 4070 use that stupid ass power connector. Let me have a look at it. 4070 uses that. Well, the Founders Edition does. 4070 uses it. 4060 Ti, does it use it? Power connector. Let me see. Trying to find out for sure.
I'm trying to find. I'm looking here myself on Newegg, because Newegg usually has their people put up good shots of these things, and I'm like, show me the power connector. Show me no, don't show me that.
No.
Okay.
But here's the good news. Yes, there are adapters for it. And unless you are at the very tippy top of whatever graphics card you're getting, and at that point, a 650 watt power supply is not going to handle it. You're going to have to replace it. When you get lower down power wise, those adapters are pretty reliable because they're not pushing as much electricity as the high end cards are.
Indeed.
If you're talking like a GPU with like a maximum power draw of 250 watts, using the PCIe to that connect to the adapter, not a problem. It's not going to hurt a dang thing. It's well above what that thing is supposed to be rated for. The only problem is that thing is rated for like 600 watts max. And you never go with your spec based on the max rating. you always leave some wiggle room based on specifications. And aside from the faults in the design of the connector, NVIDIA didn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room. Like, they kind of maxed out what was the most power that could go down that connection. And that was dumb. And they're still doing it. And that's dumb. It's a dumb connector. The only way to fix it is to add a second connector to the graphics card for, more amperage for a different, connector. But they don't want to do that. We just want one simple connection. So it's a form over function thing. Regardless, it's going to depend on which card you get. Lower down the stack, probably not. Although they might, with the 5060, we don't know. They might say, we're getting rid of the old one entirely. But even if most of the cards include an adapter, because they know that most people power supplies are one of the least.
What I would say, if they don't include an adapter and they know, and you determine you need one, it goes, oh, hey, I need an adapter. And you go on Amazon or Newegg, or I'd say Newegg for something like this. But
yeah,
if you were to go to Amazon, watch out for the companies that have a name that's a grab bag of letters, because they're not going to be there in 3 months.
Yeah,
to go, your adapter melted my computer.
Yeah, I mean, the power supply is one of the least upgraded components. Mm-hmm. People just get that and let it sit. They don't even think about their power supply until they have to get the graphics card won't work with it. So the adapters have been pretty common included with these cards. If it's going to have one of those probably next generation, like if we get to the RTX 60 series, they won't be shipping with adapters anymore. But for this series, they will. So there is that. You shouldn't have any problem using them. If you come up against a card that has a bigger requirement, you're going to have to replace the power supply anyway. Just get one that has it natively. That has the power connector natively, then you won't have to worry about it. Okay. James L. Let's see. Hi guys. Hopefully this is an easy one. I have a fan on my desktop that's rattling, and it's not the bearings or anything, because when I take it out of the case and let it run, it doesn't rattle at all. In fact, when I swap the front fan to the same spot, it starts rattling too. I think it's something about the case that's causing a resonance. Is there anything I can do to shock mount the thing? Thanks and hugs to the cats, James L. Yeah, that's exactly what the thing is.
Sometimes it's there's supposed to be a little pad there. Sometimes it's on the case. It's usually on the fan, but there's something in there, a screw not being screwed in properly, or think it's in fine, but it's not. That's just letting it shake.
Yeah, these are it. Or even sometimes the case itself is just weirdly designed, and in such a way, you find that one weird case where there's you've gotten some weird, stupid resonance, and the case is making this noise, and you're like, and it's driving you crazy. There are ways to isolate fans in a system. One of the simplest and super cheap ways is something that's called rubber screws. It's these weird looking things. You're going to replace the Phillips head screws that came with the fan. And
these basically pull through.
Yeah,
you have to stretch them through and pull them.
Yeah, you kind of got. Sometimes you got to get a little Stretch Armstrong with them to get them all the way through. But these,
and I will note from previous experience, if you find these on wherever you go to online, you'll see some $5 ones, some $8 ones, some $20 ones. Don't get the absolute cheapest. I've broken more of those than you would think.
But you also don't need to get the most expensive. And they come in bags. They come in bags of bunches and bunches of them. They do a very good job of isolating the case from the fan. So they're connected and they're held in place and they're not going to go, they're not loose or anything, but they're also no longer transferring vibrations from from the fan to the case. So that resonance, that rattling, whatever's causing it, all gone. Now there is the possibility that, and I have seen weirder stuff, that once, even with isolating the fan, you're still going to hear rattling. And that's not because of the fan interacting with the case. There's something else in your case in there.
Yeah, it just happens to be near the fan, so you think it's the fan. For example, a cable going near the fan might have a piece of plastic that, hey, just the random airflow off the fan is causing it to tap, 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 tap against and you think, that's that fan rattling again. No, it's a piece of cabling.
Trying to isolate a noise in a computer is so frustrating because you got to put your ear to it.
Because I don't know about that, Nash. With the prevalence of glass panels on the side, you can usually get a good flashlight looking in there and going, well, it looks like it's vibrating.
Anyway, that's a cheap and easy way of doing it is the rubber screws there.
I wouldn't spend more than $10 on the parts unless you decide you really want a bag of 50 of them.
All right. Hi, Nash and Mike and Floofs. Quick question. Do you have any recommendations for software to set up an Android phone as a webcam? Take care, Davis R.
I do not.
I do.
I've not had. Good. I'm sure you've done that before.
Yeah, I've typically used DroidCam. It's fairly, the lag is low. The ability to control the camera on the phone is pretty robust, and it lets me use an old phone over here for when I set up instead of having to buy a whole other webcam. Whenever I'm using my workbench and I want to stream my workbench and whatnot, I just use the phone instead. There's another version of it called DroidCam X, which is a little much because there are two parts to it. This is with all of these. You have to run a server on your computer and you run the client on the phone. And the server software talks to the client software on the phone, and that's how it transmits the image to your computer.
Which is also why there's some lag.
Yeah. The basic DroidCam, the server is very lightweight. And when you open up OBS and tell it you want a video source, you tell it to go to the server, and the server acts as a virtual camera, and boom, it's your video source. DroidCam X, their server is actually a weird hybrid of OBS itself. So it's like a second OBS. And it's a little extra. I think that they're like, I don't think you understand what people are trying to do here. I mean, you're given a bunch. That's cool and all, but it's a little bit much. So I've had better choice, and they're still both being updated, but I like the DroidCam over DroidCam X. So I've had good experience.
I think they've actually started referring to DroidCam X now as DroidCam X Classic, which may mean they're going to be depreciating it soon.
Oh, boy. Anyway, I got a couple other quick questions that came in. This is from Minspy. What brand of monitor cleaner would you recommend for a VG27A Q3A gaming monitor? Because I have no idea where to start to not have a lot of streaking. I've used Windex wipes, electronic wipes. They have a special brand they have set up for those. I prefer those because the way you need to clean electronic devices is turn them off. You do not spray the liquid on the screen directly. You spray it on the cleaning surface. You don't spray too much, and you wipe with that. And then once it's dried off, then you turn it back on.
The pre-built wipes, though, you still turn off the monitor, but it's just a case of turn off the monitor, take out wipe.
And you don't have to worry about spraying stuff around your electronics, so you don't have to worry about spraying on too much. It's already pre-measured, blah, blah, blah. And the container, the container reseals, so you can just hold on to those. And it's Windex. I've had good experience with Windex.
Now, the other thing I would do after you've done that is find or do something to have a completely white background, like open a Word document or something, and just not have anything and take it up the whole screen, because you'll then see the spots, the little bits you've missed.
Right. I got one last one. This one might be a little complicated. This is from Erica. Hello, Nash and Mike. I'm having an ongoing monitor issue. It will suddenly start flickering, sometimes just a few times, sometimes for several minutes. What I have currently, HP Pavilion 22 CWA is a HD 1080p IPS LED. All right, let me search for that, please.
Okay. Got it here on.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it. From 2015, had it since 2018. All right, let me see what we got.
Well, 7-year-old monitor. I mean, it's not surprising that it's starting to throw a little issue.
Yeah, let me see here. Okay. Let me read the rest of it here. The only commonality I've noticed is it will sometimes happen after playing a game on Steam, or if I have several YouTube tabs open, but not every time. It also does not happen when I use it with my work laptop. It started on my old PC and just started happening on my new PC. I've checked the cords, even upgraded to a better quality one. My old PC, I've adjusted the refresh rate and it still happened. I haven't tried that on my current one. Is there something I can try, or is it time for a new monitor? If it's time for a new one, are there any other brands better than others? Thank you, Erica. Well, see, this is one of those things. I was talking with Lewis about this the other day out in Ankara, because one of his monitors is slowly starting to go bad. This seems like it could potentially be a capacitor issue, because the age of it and the flickering, and then it sometimes for several minutes. Yeah, what's happening here is when you push your monitor hard enough, those capacitors aren't recharging fast enough, and the power isn't going where it needs to on the circuit board, and it has to, it's like, whoa, and then finally the power builds up again, because capacitors are like little reservoirs. The power flows in and it lets out a specific voltage and microfarad rating and all that. If it gets drained too fast and it's not filling back up fast enough, which is what happens sometimes when capacitors fail, then you get this things get thrown off. You can fix this, but it is a tedious process, and it's not something I would recommend to just people who are not familiar with soldering and not feel comfortable with it. It is something you can take to have repaired, but it is also something I would not.
You'll have to look at the cost to repair versus the cost to get a new monitor. If the shop is quoting you, this is going to be between parts and labor $300, you might consider a new monitor.
Heck, even if they're quoting you something like 100, which would sound about reasonable, you figure an hour or so, because it's not a whole lot of work to do this. It's just tedious. But if you figure an hour or so of their time, plus they're charging you a fair price for capacitors, even like 100, 150 or so, it's still too much, because at that point, getting another monitor is a viable option for that.
Indeed.
In terms of decent replacements.
Well, hang on. Before we go there.
Yeah.
There's something else I'm going to suggest, because I did Google this.
Yeah.
And now this fix assumed that you were using an NVIDIA card. Okay. Go into the NVIDIA Control Panel app and adjust desktop color settings and change the content type reported to the display to either desktop programs or full screen videos. If that setting is on auto select recommended, the display blinks off randomly.
Weird.
Yeah. Well, what happens with an auto select is it goes, oh, he's doing this. Oh, now he's doing this. I've got to change. Now, that may be the case. You say you got multiple tabs open for videos. If the auto select thinks Oh, they went to that tab for video. I'm changing to do videos, flicker, 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 and it could be. I am leaning towards the capacitor thing, but try this because it's a simple software setting, and if it solves everything, fantastic.
As far as replacements, I have had good luck with Asus monitors and Asus routers. It's just their motherboards. However, their warranty I don't know if they've cleaned up their warranty act or not, so it's hard to say there.
What size was this monitor? This was a 22?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would also check to see what, New Year's sales are going on. Yeah. You might be able to pick up an even bigger monitor for 150.
IPS is fairly cheap right now because everybody's looking at mini LED, everybody's looking at OLED. IPS monitors are fairly cheap. Gigabyte has a good track record with their monitors, oddly enough. MSIs aren't bad. Corsairs are nice, but incredibly overpriced. And then you have something like the Dell Dell does pretty good monitors. I have had, and this is, your mileage may vary, and understand that going this route, it might make warranty service a little bit harder if you even get a warranty service for it. AOCS, yeah, that's a good, that Sarah's had a couple of those because they're they're on the cheaper side, but they work. One brand, this is kind of, it's a company that brands themselves as Innocen, INNOCN. And what they do is there is a factory that makes let's say, well, there's a couple factories, but let's say there's a factory that makes the monitor panels for Dell, and makes monitor panels for someone like LG back when they were done. So for other companies. And then those companies take those panels, they package them into a monitor, and they put their name on it. What those companies can do sometimes, like Innocen, INNOCN, like what they do sometimes is they are actually the company making those video panels. So they say to themselves, well, why don't we also make our own and just, since we're mark it down a little bit. And it's the advantage there is it's still the same panel. So you still get the same image quality and whatnot. It just may vary in other, stuff, like on-screen display and other. I managed to get two Innocen monitors, two 4K mini LED Innocen monitors, from their website. They were refurbs, and they were on Black Friday sale. I got two of them for $800. They are 4K. Oh, and they're 32 inches. These are giant, and they're super bright, and they're not OLED, they're mini LED. They work pretty well. And I have had zero problems with them. The one's got a little bit of a color temperature difference with the other, which kind of bothers me. So that's why I got two of the same model, because I wanted the color. But
you wanted to,
yeah, identical experience across all monitors, but I can live with it. Picture quality is really good. They make smaller ones. Because let me see. You normally find their stuff. They have their own website, but you can also find their stuff on Amazon. Let me have a look. Innocent monitors. Let's see what they have here. They make a lot of the gaming monitors. They're high refresh rate. They also make some smaller ones too. Yeah, because I'm seeing they have. Oh, this is hell. This is a nice. Just to give you an idea here. This is actually a pretty good deal. It's running out 2 hours, so you have to decide what you want to do about that. But oh no, you got to beat the clock. I mean, don't worry too much about super beating the clock on these things, but let's see. 27-inch, 120 hertz, 1080 for $139. Honestly, if I was looking for a new monitor and I wasn't looking for 4K, 1440p would be a minimum at this point. Let's see what their 1440p 100 hertz. That's not a bad one. Let's see what they've got here. That's only $200 for a 1440p 27-inch. Oh yeah, that's nice. So there's some companies like that you can get it. Now understand they are based in China. They are not big companies like Dell. They are typically they make the panels. They are repackaging under their own brand. So it's a risk. But it also gets to the point where it's like, how much did it cost you? And you figure how much, the actual risk was. So that's up to you. I will say, if you're shopping for a monitor, don't go lower than 1440p resolution and don't go lower than, say, 100 hertz, 90 hertz for refresh rate. Anything lower than that's not worth your time these days.
Indeed.
You'd need, because 1440p is becoming the standard to replace 1080p. We'll move to 4K eventually, but we're not there yet. But you're gonna, yeah.
I feel about 4K the same way I feel about most AI stuff. Most people don't need it.
Most people.
You're gonna eventually on the 4K thing. Everyone's gonna have it because the manufacturers will stop making anything less, except for niche products.
I gotta say, I really like it because I have a 32-inch screen, and I need the real estate for doing this crap. This gives me room to put everything everywhere, all over my screens. And it's they still feel a little cluttered, but mainly I've got plenty of space to put shit for doing all this, and it really comes in handy, especially when I'm editing and things. So it's try Mike's suggestion about that setting first, Erica. But if that doesn't help, it does sound like 2015. Yeah, it's 10 years old. And it probably wasn't on the higher. It's an HP. It probably wasn't on the higher end to begin with. I mean, even my monitors, which were kind of on the higher end, like when those 1440p monitors I got back in 2013, they were like $300 each, $340 each when I got them. And even one of them started their capacitor started going bad after about 10 years. So that was back in like $2014 or $2013. So, yeah. So they do age. I will say it's remarkable. CRTs seem to have a whole lot more resilience and longevity than some LCDs, mainly because of the capacitors. Like it's crazy. Well, with CRTs, it's easier to access the components to replace them. They built those to take them apart. LCDs, they don't build them to take them apart, and it's harder to access the capacitor to replace them. So, plus CRTs are getting rarer, so it's worth more to keep them because like nobody's making them anymore. Anyway, that's off topic. Hopefully that helped you, Erica. All right, that looks like it's going to do it for us for this week. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for being here. Hopefully we were informative and helpful. We'll be here next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions, send those to request@radiodeadair.com or leave them in the YouTube comments. I check both. And in the meanwhile, for Mike and myself, we'll see you next time.
Yep.